Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava, page 55, A at the top of the page, with the words Nemar Bahem Tov, Amar Lo. In the context of the mitzvah to honor one's parents, the word good is stated here, in order that it shall be good for you. Deuteronomy 5:16. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said to him, "Before you ask me why the word good is stated, ask me if the word good is actually stated there or not. Since I am not sufficiently proficient in my knowledge of the biblical verses to remember the precise wording, and I do not know if the word good is stated there or not, go to Rabbi Tanchum bar Hanilai, who was commonly found at the academy of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, who was an expert in Agadah. Perhaps he heard something from him on this matter and can answer your question." Rabbi Chanina ben Agil went to him and asked him. Rabbi Tanchum said to him, "I did not hear anything on this matter from Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi himself, but this is what Shmuel bar Nachum, the mother of Rav Acha, son of Rabbi Chanina, said to me." And some say it was the father of the mother of Rabbi Achai, son of Rabbi Chanina. It does not mention the word good in the first tablets, since they were ultimately destined to be broken after the Jews made the golden calf. The Gemara asks, and even if it had mentioned the term good, and they were ultimately destined to break, what of it? Rav Ashi said, if this term had been mentioned in the first tablets, all good would have, God forbid, ceased from Israel once they were broken. Therefore, only the second version, which was written after the breaking of the tablets, contains the word good, so that there would always be good for the Jewish people. Rabbi Yehoshua says, if one sees the letter Tet in his dream, it is a good sign for him. The Gemara asks, what is the reason? If we say that it is because the word good, Tov, is written in the Torah and begins with the letter Tet, then one could say instead that it is an allusion to the verse, and I will sweep it with the broom. Vetehi tetia b'matate. Vetatai tatia b'matate hashamed. I will sweep it with the broom of destruction, Isaiah 14:23, which also contains the letter Tet several times. But this is referring to punishment. The Gemara answers, we mean that when someone sees one Tet in a dream, it's a good sign. But this letter contains several. But the Gemara asks, the later statement is problematic, as even according to this explanation, one can say that a single letter Tet alludes to the verse, her filthiness, tumata bishuleha, is in her skirts. That's one Tet. Tumata bishuleha. Lamentations 1:9, which begins with the letter Tet. The Gemara answers, we mean that when one sees the letter Tet together with the letter Bet in his dream, it is a good thing. I think they're making it up as they go. That's what I think. If they meant that, they would have said it at the beginning. We mean that when one sees the letter Tet with the letter Bet in his dream, it is a good sign for him, as the word Tov is written with both. The Gemara asks further, let us say, this alludes to the verse, her gates are sunk, tavu, into the ground, which begins with the letter Tet, followed by letter Bet. Rather, it is not merely because it is the first letter of the word Tov, good Tov, that is considered a good omen. Since the Torah initially introduced the letter text in the context of good, which the word. Rather, it is not merely because it is the first letter of the word good that it is considered a good omen, since the Torah initially introduces the letter Tet in the context of good with the word good Tov itself, a good omen, as from the word Bereshit, the first word in the Torah, until the verse, and God saw that the light was good, Tov, Genesis 1:4. The letter Tet is not written anywhere, and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, if one sees a eulogy in his dream, it is an illusion that in heaven they had pity on him, and saved him from actually being eulogized. The Gemara notes this statement applies specifically when he saw the word eulogy, hesped, in writing. The Mishnah teaches, and similarly, undomesticated animals and birds are subject to the same halachot as domesticated animals. Reish Lakish says here Rabbi Yehuda Nasi taught a ruling from the Tosefta that illustrates the statement that birds and undomesticated animals are also subject to the prohibition of diverse kinds, a cock, a peacock, and a peasant, and diverse kinds with respect to each other, since this halakha applies to birds as well. The Gemara asks, isn't it obvious? What novelty is stated here? Rav Chaviva said the novelty here is because they reared together, lest you say, since they are reared together, they are essentially one species and not considered diverse kinds. Therefore, it teaches us that they are actually separate species, and the halachot of diverse kinds do apply to them. Following the discussion of the prohibition of diverse kinds as it relates to birds, Shmuel says the domestic goose and the wild goose are different kinds with respect to each other, and are not one species. Rava bar Rav Hanan objects to this. What is the reason? If we say it is because the beak of this one is long and the beak of that one is short, if that is so, then with regard to a Persian camel and an Arabian camel, where the neck of this one is thick and the neck of that one is thin, they should indeed be considered diverse kinds with respect to one another. Clearly, though, the camels are in fact two variants of a single species. Rather, Bias says that is not the reason, but rather another difference exists between the domestic goose and the wild goose concerning the male with regard to this type. That is, the wild goose, its testicles are visible from the outside, and with regard to that one, the other was the domestic goose, its testicles are inside. Rav Papa said that another difference exists between them concerning the female. This one, that is the wild goose, releases only one egg in its ovary and later releases another, and that one, that is the domestic goose, releases several eggs at once in its ovary. Consequently, they are not considered to be the same species. In connection with the prohibition of diverse kinds, Rabbi Yehoshua says that Reish Lakish says, one who crossbreeds two species of creatures that live in the sea is flogged for transgressing the prohibition of crossbreeding diverse kinds. The Gemara asks, what is the reason? That is, where is there an allusion to this in the Torah? Rav Ada bar Ahava said, in the name of Ula, it is derived from a verbal analogy between the term according to its species, Leminehu, Genesis 1:21, referring to animals living on dry land, and the same term according to its species, Leminehu, Genesis 1:25, referring to sea creatures in the same way that the former may not be crossbred, similarly the latter may not be crossbred. The sage Rachava, the sage Rachava raises a dilemma with regards to one who drives a wagon. Okay, we have time. With regard to one who drives a wagon on the seashore with a goat and a shibuta, certain species of fish together, pulled by the goat on land and the fish at sea, what is the halacha? Has he violated the prohibition against performing labor with diverse kinds in the same way that one does when plowing with an ox and a donkey together or not? The two sides of the question are as follows. Do we say that since the goat does not descend into the sea and the shibuta does not ascend onto the land, that they are not working together at all? I don't know how it's even possible to do that. To pull something. Anyway. And so he has not done anything forbidden, or perhaps, since in any event he is now driving the wagon with both of them, he thereby transgresses the prohibition. Ravina objects to this, but if that is so, that one is liable, then if a person joined wheat and barley together in his hand, and sowed the wheat in Eretz Yisrael, and the barley outside of Eretz Yisrael, where the prohibition of diverse kinds does not apply to seeds, so too he should be liable. Clearly, however, there are two distinct regions, and the seeds are not considered to be mixed together. The sages said in response to his objections, how can these cases be compared? There, in the case of planting diverse kinds of seeds, it is specifically Eretz Yisrael that is the location subject to this obligation, whereas outside of Eretz Yisrael is not a location subject to this obligation. Here, by contrast, in the case of the person driving a wagon, both his location, that is the land, and that location, that is the sea, are locations subject to this obligation. Consequently, if one works together, two different species, either on the land or in the sea, he is liable. Therefore, the question is a valid one. Hadron alach shor shenaga chasapara. We shall return to the ox that has gored a cow. The 5th chapter of Bava Kama was concluded with Daf 55a, and we'll continue with the next parak, the 6th chapter of Bava Kama, Akonis, Son Ladir, on page 55b.